You know that feeling, right? That little nagging thought, gosh, I wish I could just say what I mean in English.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Whether it's, for work or maybe planning a trip or just chatting with people, that desire for fluency, for confidence, it's something almost everyone feels.
It really is universal. And that's what we're diving into today, some really solid advice to help you get there.
We've been digging into a couple of YouTube resources that tackle this.
That's right. We looked at the Super English podcast.
Mm.
They had this great mix of encouragement and smart ways to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the English Podcast Zone, which is fantastic for showing you like real everyday English conversations.
Yeah, practical stuff.
Exactly. So the plan is to pull out the best bits, the most useful takeaways from both, and give you things you can actually, use right away to help your spoken English.
And it's interesting how they fit together. One's kind of about the mindset, the bigger picture.
Right, the encouragement side.
And the other is very much hands-on, like here's how people actually talk.
Precisely. So look, whether you're just finding your feet with English, or maybe you're looking to smooth out the rough edges, we think there's definitely something valuable here for you.
Okay, so where do we start? I think maybe with the big one.
Yeah.
The thing that stops so many people before they even begin.
Ah, yes, that fear of making mistakes.
Definitely.
The Super English podcast really goes into this. The speaker talks about their own experience, overcoming that shyness, that worry about messing up.
And they use that brilliant analogy, the baby learning to walk.
Yes, I love that. They fall down, hundreds of times?
Easily.
But they just keep getting back up. They don't analyze why they fell. They just try again.
Mm-hmm.
What's the lesson there for us language learners, do you think?
Well, it really hits home, doesn't it? That, every little mistake, every awkward pronunciation, it's just part of learning. It's not failure.
It's not failure. It's feedback.
Right. Feedback.
Yeah.
It shows you what you need to maybe work on next. It sort of guides you.
Mm-hmm. And the other point they made, which I think is so important, is that most people, they're actually pretty nice about it.
Yeah, we build it up in our heads sometimes, thinking everyone's going to laugh or judge us.
Right.
Yeah.
But the reality, as the speaker found, is most people are kind, maybe even helpful, when they see you trying.
So the advice was basically take a breath, smile.
And just start talking. Even if it's simple, that first step is key.
It's interesting, too, because even in the English Podcast Zone, which is more about the practical conversation, you see a small version of this. Remember when the guy, Nick, he forgets Anna's name?
Oh, yeah. That slightly, cringy moment we've all had.
Totally. But what does Anna do?
She's completely cool about it.
Yeah.
Says something like, oh, don't worry, happens to me all the time. I'm terrible with names.
Exactly. It just normalizes it. It shows that even fluent speakers have these little hiccups.
And it's not the end of the world. Communication keeps going. It's about that connection, not perfection.
Great point. Okay, so we need to be brave, embrace the stumbles like that baby. What else helps us get steadier?
Well, that leads us right into listening. Really active listening and just surrounding yourself with the sounds of English.
The Super English podcast talked about this quite a bit.
They did. Just listening helps you get used to the rhythm, the pronunciation, picking up new phrases almost without realizing it. They compared it to music.
Like how you just sort of absorb a song you hear a lot?
Exactly that.
Yeah.
But the key is making it active, not just background noise.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do that?
Well, they mentioned watching movies, TV shows, the usual suspects.
Right.
But they added that point about paying attention to the nonverbal cues, too.
Yeah.
Hand gestures, facial expressions.
Yeah. Why is that helpful?
Because so much communication isn't just words, is it?
No, absolutely. You get context, you get clues about the meaning or the emotion, even if you miss some words. It helps you piece it together.
It's like extra data points for your brain.
Totally. And then you look at the English Podcast Zone. I mean, their whole setup is active listening practice.
Yeah, the structure is really smart.
How so? What stands out?
Well, you hear the conversation first, like at normal speed.
Right. Authentic speed.
Then they pull out specific words and phrases, explain them.
Tricky bets.
Yeah. And then you hear the dialogue again, but slower.
So it layers the understanding. Hear it, understand the parts, hear it again to solidify.
It feels like they're really training your ears step by step.
It's a great method. Okay, so we're listening better, we're less afraid of mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
How do we actually start, getting the words out? Producing the language.
Okay, practical speaking tips. This Super English podcast had some good, straightforward advice here.
Like what?
Like practicing with friends if you can, or even, and this might sound weird to some people, just talking to yourself in English.
Does that really work?
Apparently. It gets you used to forming the sounds, hearing your own voice, and they stressed you don't need fancy words to start. Simple vocabulary is fine.
That's a relief, isn't it? Because you can feel like you need this huge vocabulary before you dare speak.
Right. But just communicating the basic idea is the first goal. Confidence builder.
Makes sense. Get the ball rolling.
What else?
Reading out loud.
Ah, okay. Why?
To connect seeing the word with saying the word, they use another analogy, exercising your speech muscles.
I like that. It's physical practice, not just mental.
And then turning to the English podcast zone, their dialogues are just full of these practical, everyday phrases.
Yeah, the stuff people actually say, like in a bit of a hurry.
Or contact details slip my mind.
Right. Why is picking up those chunks of language useful?
Yeah, because it makes you sound more natural, doesn't it? It's how native speakers often talk, using these set phrases.
Moves you away from just sounding like a textbook.
Exactly. And their language takeaway segment is gold for this. They explain how to use these phrases.
Yeah, with examples. Very practical. And then they have that other bit, putting it together. Oh, yeah, where they look at how words fit together, like all the different ways you can use around.
Around here, around the corner, around there.
Yeah.
Subtle differences.
Or common combos, like terrible with, like, I'm terrible with names.
What's the benefit of focusing on those combinations?
It's about fluency, I think, understanding how the language flows, how words naturally cluster together. It's more than just knowing single words.
Right. It's knowing how they dance together, which leads us nicely into vocabulary and understanding those nuances.
And the English podcast zone really focuses on this with that language takeaway section we mentioned.
Absolutely. It's very targeted. Here's the phrase. Here's what it means. Here's how you use it. Super clear.
Very effective for actively building that practical vocabulary.
And the Super English podcast, while maybe less direct on vocabulary drills, still has that underlying message.
But it comes with time.
Yeah. That as you listen more, read more, interact more, your vocabulary just naturally grows. It's about consistent exposure.
So it's a process, not something you learn overnight.
Definitely. A continuous building process.
Okay, so we're listening, we're trying to speak, we're picking up words. What keeps people going? Because it's, it's a long game.
Ah, yes. Consistency and mindset. Both sources really hit on this.
The Super English podcast had another nice analogy. The tree.
Planting a tree, yes. You don't just plant it and walk away, right?
No, you got to water it.
Regularly. And language is the same. That consistent effort, even if it's small doses every day, that's what leads to growth over time. Why is that daily habit so key?
Well, it keeps it fresh in your mind, doesn't it? It stops you from forgetting things. It makes it feel less like a huge task and more like just part of your routine.
Exactly. And they suggested things like setting small goals for the day, achievable ones.
And celebrating when you hit them, even tiny wins.
That's so important for motivation. They also mentioned maybe keeping a journal in English.
Or even just trying to think in English sometimes during the day.
Right. Weaving it into your life. What's the impact of doing those small things consistently?
They add up, right? It builds momentum. And it makes English feel less like a subject and more like a tool you're actually using.
I also like the mountain climbing image from the Super English podcast.
Oh, yeah. Step by step.
You don't just magically appear at the top.
Yeah.
Each step is progress. And crucially, believing you can do it, that I can learn this attitude.
How important is that self-belief?
Oh, it's massive.
Yeah.
It's what gets you through the plateaus, the tough days.
Yeah.
If you believe you can, you're more likely to keep trying after a setback.
Instead of just thinking, oh, I'm no good at this.
Exactly. And remembering it's a journey. Like I said, not a race. Be patient with yourself.
Takes the pressure off a bit.
It really does. Fostering that positive, persistent approach.
Oh.
Okay, so stepping back a bit, why bother? What's the bigger picture here?
Connection, right. Connecting with people, with the world. The Super English podcast talked about this beautifully.
How do they frame it?
They called English a bridge, a way to connect to different people, different cultures, opens up travel, understanding.
Like a key unlocking doors.
Exactly. What does that mean in real terms, having that key?
Well, it changes English from just, something you study in a classroom to a real tool for interacting with the world, for real human connection.
Like that story they told about the tourist asking for directions.
Yeah. That simple exchange. But it creates a moment of connection. They made the point that language isn't just about words.
It's about feelings, understanding.
Communicating on a human level.
Yeah.
And even the English podcast zone dialogue. Mick and Anna meeting at a conference.
It's brief, but...
Which shows that social function. English helping two people make that initial contact over a shared experience.
It reminds you why you're learning in the first place to connect. And speaking of practical connections, the English Podcast Zone had that little tip in their Fluency Builder bit.
Yes, about greetings.
Yeah, using things like, how's it going? Instead of always just, how are you?
Right, small things that just make you sound a bit more natural.
Yeah, more comfortable, more like everyday conversation, picking up those little nuances.
Definitely helps smooth things out.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, pulling from both these resources. If we had to boil it down, what are the main takeaways?
Well, from both, I'd say. One, definitely embrace mistakes. See them as learning fuel, not failures.
Right. Be the baby learning to walk.
Exactly. Two, really work on your active listening. Immerse yourself. Pay attention to sounds and sights.
Three, practice speaking consistently, even small amounts, even just to yourself. Start simple.
Four, keep building that vocabulary and understanding how phrases work together naturally. The English Podcast Zone is great for that specific bit.
And five, mindset is huge. Be patient, be persistent, believe you can do it, and remember it's a journey.
And underpinning all of that is the why. Using English to connect, to open up your world. Remember that this is your journey. Every single step, no matter how small it feels, it's progress.
Definitely. Which leads us to maybe a final thought for you listening. Take a moment, think about maybe just one or two things we talked about today that really struck a chord with you. How could you maybe weave just one of those ideas into your routine starting this week? Could you try talking to yourself for 5 minutes? Or really focus on the nonverbals in an English show you watch?
Think about that ripple effect. How could that one small, consistent change start to build over time? What new connections or understanding might open up for you down the line?
Yeah, maybe even go back to those original YouTube videos with these ideas fresh in your mind. See what else sparks for you.